All right, Henrik, welcome
Thank
to the
you.
podcast, to Mother Love, Moederliefde in Dutch.
It's a good place to be.
Thank you. It's really good to have you. You are, well, just an expert in the field of baby wearing. You've written several scientific articles on baby wearing and the biological and the psychological effects on it, of it. You've worked for Ergo Baby. You did their research for over 10 years?
9 years.
9 years?
Yes, to be precise. Yeah.
I'm really happy to have you here.
Likewise.
And to talk about baby wearing and also the development of your own baby carrier.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a bit more about who you are and the work that you do?
Sure. I had the incredible fortune to have 9 years of an almost unlimited travel budget and time to acquaint myself with anything related to baby wearing. It turned out that the leaders of the field were the idea of physical contact between mother/father and the child as a promoter or supporter of secure attachment. This attachment meaning the quality of the child's tie to his primary caregivers, and that's normally the mother and the father. Yeah. So it's not, in that sense, when you speak about a child's attachment, it's how the child perceives the parents as a secure base for the child's exploration and regulation of stress and concern. This is technically what attachment is about. So with the backing, I was able to go to these major conferences, and there was beginning to be a greater interest in the idea of physical contact and what that could do for the attachment quality of the child. So I had what you call an amazing network in relatively short time. So it was some fascinating years I had there. And then the company let me go in 2018. And I then actually, for the first time, had the time to really sit down and write some review articles. And there was a special issue in the journal called Infant Behavior and Development.
Yeah.
And the guest editors were two good friends of mine, two American professors, and they said, "Could you write the review article?" And I said, "Sure, I'll do that." And I honestly thought nobody would ever read it, and it turned out to be the most cited article of that journal. They look at it over the past 3 years, but so I'm not saying it's the overall ever, but in the 3 years where they were recording it, then it was the most cited, which is of course good for my ego, but it's even better for the sake of baby wearing. That in fact the concept was put on the map with this special issue. And then I've also written an article together with, amongst others, Charles Price, who is a professor and the past president of the Pediatric Orthopedic Society of North America. Probably one of the biggest experts on hip dysplasia and healthy hip development. And we wrote an article targeting pediatricians and neonatologists.
Yeah, I read that one,
Yeah, sure. To make sure that they have sort of, what do we need to know when we speak to a client. So yes, and then to round it off, then I had an old curiosity about what are the links between baby wearing and motor development. Yeah. There were already different people speaking more sort of about reflexes. There's a German PhD who also looked, there was a myth about that if a child is put upright before it can sit independently, that would irreversibly ruin the spine. Yeah. And she did a retrospective study of that as part of her PhD and found that was certainly not the case. And that was later corroborated in another study where they even used some technical gizmos to measure the spine quality or the spine orientation. Anyways, but she described the child as a parent clinger. Yeah. And she actually stole that from another researcher, but that's fine. And then there's Mel Cyril, who speaks about in-arms carrying, where she's really making the case that the child is quite keen to participate in being carried with the clinging of the legs, grabbing with the palmar reflex, all these things. Yeah. But these are more reflexes, and motor development reflexes is part of it, but it's much broader than just reflexes. So, so I sat down for the first time, just to write that article. And it was while writing that I had a shock. I said, why, we have a complete blind spot on what are the child's needs in comparing to, in relation to being in a baby carrier.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, I'm designing my own carrier.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of, that's me. Yeah.
Yeah, we will go to the blind spots.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
I'm just curious at what you found in your years of research.
Yeah.
What are some of the long-term and short-term effects biologically and psychologically
Right.
of baby wearing?
Right. You know, some of the research that inspires some of the research in kangaroo mother care, which is premature children being put skin to skin, comes from some of the animal research that was done at Columbia University by amazing psychiatrist and Professor Myron Hofer. And I think it frames what happens in parent or mother or father infant contact very well. He says the mother is a hidden regulator. Yeah. And what does that mean? That means that if you really look in this case, he was looking at rats, because that was the animal model, and then you see, you know how their biological systems and their behavioral systems perform when they are with the mother. And if you then take the mother away and then see how is their behavior now over time, and how's their biology, you see that the systems go completely out of whack over time. And the first thing that happens is the child is, the pup is really distress calling, and then also the stress hormones go up. But I can't recall the figures now, but it's like about 1,000%. Yeah. It really is stressed. And you don't notice these things unless you really put on a lens and really look for these behaviors, but it's there. And then he did experiments of removing the pups from the mother before they would wean or stop lactating naturally. And he put them in a stress paradigm where he fixates them, and the young rats don't like that because it's danger. And they develop deep ulcers. Wow. In their early years. And the control group, which were the mothers, they didn't do it. They were resistant to these stresses during most of their teenage years and their adulthood. But then when they were very old, then they reacted to it. Yeah. Which is kind of like, you don't want to be, very susceptible to stress when you're young, because that's
so it comes out later than in life.
It comes out later. Yeah. It wasn't that you became completely immune. It just is when you would kind of expect that you would be susceptible to stresses. So there was like, he showed that the mother really regulates so many systems. And he was the first to show that. You could say, Harry Harlow also showed it with monkeys, but he didn't look necessarily so fine-grained in it. So the mother really is a hidden regulator of behavior and biology. And we have some indications in premature children from some longitudinal studies that that's certainly also very much the case. We have one study done by Niels Bergman, which looked at children that were 2 days old, either held skin to skin or put in a crib. Yeah. And then he monitored the sleep quality of these children, and also an indicator of the vagal tone, which is a slightly controversial measuring system. So perhaps I'm just taking that one with a grain of salt. But the amount of quiet sleep in the observation period, either skin to skin or in the crib, it declined with 82% in the children that were separate. Yeah. You would never catch it if you just walked by the crib as the
They both appear to be sleeping.
They both appear to sleep when you walk by them, they're asleep. Yeah. But we like quiet sleep much more than we like active sleep, because it's a sign of, So we do have some minor indications at a sleep state organization. And we also see that with the preterm children, but we also see that in the full-term children.
And most of the study in this field is done with preterm children, right?
That's a huge field,
Yeah.
the kangaroo mother care.
Yeah.
And that's why the articles I wrote specifically only looked at the literature of full term, because the pediatrician could say, yeah, sure, these preterm children, they will need it, but full term, no, they are mature enough to not need all this hippie nonsense of contact. So, but that's definitely not the case. Yeah.
Which is, if you look at it from the perspective that we as humans are mammals, and you see all mammals have their babies close, carry their babies.
Yes. But we are humans
primate.
Have this big brain that makes us think we are so much smarter than nature. And,
we are nature.
And have so many strange ideas. But yeah, so it seems that there really are the separation. The newborn is not really equipped to deal with that. From when we look at its sleep behavior.
Yeah. So separation, then, just to make it clear, is also the sleeping aside then in a crib?
Actually, but also the question which we don't know scientifically is, and it's probably, it depends maybe on, also newborns come out in different ways depending on how the pregnancy went, and we can come to that. Yeah. But we don't really have much idea of when is separation sort of toxic to the child's nervous system.
So we're still doing research, sort of finding that out.
Well, it's there's still too little curiosity about. So I'm not seeing this as being funded hugely by anybody. Which is why we're
even though it's such an important question.
It is hugely important. I mean,
Also, if you look at it from the baby's perspective, I mean, that's what most new mothers struggle with. Is this, well, the baby doesn't like it when I put it down. Then she starts to cry, or he's just restless. So it's just, the babies actually say, don't put me down.
The babies are extremely clear. And then we overrule it with our big human
Well, they have
brain.
to learn to sleep by themselves. They can't do that yet.
Why then, Mr. Adult, are you, when you become a teenager, are you looking for somebody to share your bed with? And it's not just about sexuality, it's also that you want...
we are created to be close.
And why we have to teach young children that they should...
So if you look at it just from a biology perspective, or just a perspective of what children, babies, say they need, then it's quite clear.
But children can be different. But if they express displeasure with it, but that's also the tricky part. And the subtleness of their signals. They may not go into a full bloom crying, but through their behavior of sleeping unsettled, it's sort of a subliminal alarm signal, but you don't catch it.
Well, you have to know what to look for.
Exactly. So I would say, err on the side of caution and give your child plenty of contact. What do you have to lose?
Also for yourself, because it's not just for the child. It's also for the parent. That
then lends into the other big field of research, which I actually wrote also an article about the links between baby wearing and oxytocin.
That was one of my questions.
This
could you say something about what the findings are?
Yeah, if you are interested in this field, you absolutely have to get a hold of Kerstin Yves Moberg's books about oxytocin. She's a professor in physiology and a medical doctor. And she truly deserves the Nobel Prize, and it's a scandal that she hasn't had it. But it's an age-old hormone that is related to birth. It's the ejection reflex. It helps push the child.
It's a love hormone, right?
That also, but that's a later. The original was that it pushes out the child, and then also it actually pushes out the milk. So it's an ejection hormone. For contractions. But then one of the few people to actually study the other effects was Kerstin, and she had 4 children, and she noticed when she was breastfeeding a complete shift in her, that's maybe strong, but in her way of thinking, and even a mildness and a composure. And then being a physiologist says, that is interesting. What hormones are involved in this? And then she zeroed in on oxytocin and did a lot of animal studies, and could really see it's a social hormone.
Yeah. So she noticed something changing in herself when she breastfed her children, and then that came up the question, what is this?
As I recall her story, she said at that time there was so much study about stress systems, what stresses and what hormones are involved in stress.
Yeah.
But then she said nobody actually looked at what makes us feel good.
Yeah.
And that was she felt good when she was breastfeeding. It was like, whoa. And then her research changed into that field.
Yeah. So what then is the effect of baby wearing when you look at it from an oxytocin perspective?
So far we have some indication that massage makes oxytocin go up. Do we have a lot of studies on actually baby wearing oxytocin? I don't think we do.
No.
But we have animal studies that show links of should we say, the equivalent of maternal caregiving, and how that actually physiologically shapes the oxytocin receptor systems in the brains.
So they have to be developed well to actually.
If the parents, the animal parents, provide enough physical contacts, the brains will physiologically change, and they will have a high amount of oxytocin receptors because they have to be able to receive more oxytocin, and that also has behavioral and stress regulation consequences. And they've even done cross-fostering studies because in nature, some mothers lick and groom a lot, and others less. And then they took the offspring off of the low-licking grooming mothers and gave them to the high-licking groom mothers, just a few, and they were good foster parents. And the brains changed, which, the whole debate, is it the genes or is it the environment? Well, that certainly indicated that it's very much about the environment when it comes to these particular aspects.
And also that
brain.
these pups also, when they became mothers, they had the same nurturing behavior.
Yes.
Like the high nurturing behavior was passed on to the next generation.
Yes. Yeah. And there we're back to even, my article in Infant Behavior Development was named Revisiting the Roots of Attachment, because one of the big attachment theory pioneers could see that if the mothers averted physical contact with the child in the first year, and especially the first month, then at around 1 year the child would be quite aggressive. Yeah. And so that was one clear finding, that aversion of physical contact by the mother leads to aggressiveness in the offspring.
Yeah, which is a very interesting topic, because if we look at the world through that lens, we would have a very, very different approach to violence, criminal behavior. So it all starts with attachment.
It does.
And the mother-infant relationship.
And the father too, of course. Yeah. But absolutely. And but that's also where, there's a lot of money and efforts being put into, among psychologists, to make intervention programs. And one of them is a Dutch gentleman, Marinus van Eysendorn from Leiden. And I met him at one of these many attachment conferences, and I pointed out to him there is actually one good study that looked at providing baby carriers to mothers and then doing these attachment measurements. Yeah. And he says, yes, it's the most effective intervention ever done. But
baby wearing.
But he was saying, but the carriers were provided for free by companies, so that's why we don't quite accept the study. And I say, well, if you have amazing results with your interventions, then of course I understand you can ride on your high horse, but do you? Yeah. And to my opinion, they don't. The current attachment interventions, again, just to get some figures in place, it's about 35 to 40% of a given generation which will have what's called an insecure attachment, and you can measure that when the child is about 1 year. But you can actually, even now, you can look at the so-called still face situation, where the mother plays with the child, is instructed to turn the face, come back with the still face, and then you record what are the child's reactions to that. even around 2, 3, 4 months, you can see how does the child react to the mother becoming silent.
Yeah.
So it starts very early with this insecure attachment. So it's about 35 to 40% of a given generation. So that means your child will go into a class in the school where about 35 to 40% will have an insecure attachment with, and it seems to be that the bully versus the victim are sort of the two angles. So the children that had very little contact because the mother herself, as also Mary Main discovered, had very little herself.
Yeah.
So she was.
So it's passed down, huh?
It is. So she was. But they will be the angry children, and then there's the children that had some, but just not enough. That then know there's something to be had, but they're not quite getting it.
Yeah.
They become what's called ambivalently attached, and curiously, it seems that the bullies, the avoidant children. They can almost smell ambivalent or disorganized attachment, which is sort of the third category of insecure attachment, where there's trauma in the child's upbringing.
If you look at it from that lens and from that perspective, it's so clear.
Yeah.
And it's also, if we take it back to, so it's so clear in our society. And if you then take it back to baby wearing, which we're talking about, or that's our focus. Now, I mean, of course, you can talk about so much when it comes to attachment, but this, it's such an easy intervention. So why do you think that? Because we see in a lot of cultures, it's very natural, very normal for mothers to wear their babies on their bodies.
Sure.
And they're very oftentimes also very attuned to their babies because they spend so much time close to them.
Yep.
Why have we lost part of this in our Western culture?
Yeah, I mean, I that's a very good question. I don't know what the roots of why it went so wrong, so to speak. Japan, Korea, African countries, many South American countries. I don't really know.
Yeah.
I don't really know.
I don't know either. I just have a feeling that it has to do with women getting out of touch with their instinctive behavior.
Well, I mean, one could also say, but the reason why I'm a little hesitant to say has been a period in sort of in the northern European countries where baby wearing was the norm. I simply don't know.
What happened?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure that there was one. I don't know.
You're not sure if it was ever here.
No, I don't know because there's not that much sort of anthropological or historical research on it. So, but certainly, I mean, there's an amazing book called Love at Goon Park by Deborah Blum, and it describes the coming of age of psychology in the 1920s and 30s and behaviorism and so on, and those people they hated the idea of physical contact. They were so concerned that you would create dependent individuals if you gave them. They would be needy children, which stood against the Western ideal of an independent, strong-willed person.
That's interesting.
So I mean, that definitely permeated society and shaped our ideas of it. And it's only when Marshall Klaus, who was actually the mentor of Kerstin Newton's Moberg,
I don't know.
he was a formidable figure in American neonatology, and I met him twice out at Stanford in America. Very intelligent man who lost his own mother, and he wrote a book called Maternal Infant Separation, which I think it was around 1978 came out, which really said mothers and children should not be separated after birth. And because he had such medical authority, that actually started implementing change. But it's taken so many years for that message to come in. But certainly the past and the 1900 had so many prominent figures speaking against contact because they were afraid they would damage the children
So
irreversibly.
so the reverse or the opposite is true, right? We were afraid that if you would give children all the attention, give them everything they needed, and ask them for at least until in infancy, that they would become needy and wouldn't learn to be independent. But then now it's becoming so clear that a child becomes independent by receiving what they need.
They become healthily independent. I mean, because with avoidant, you do become independent, but you also become independent really of anyone.
Yeah, so that's a very important difference, right?
And then there's the other funny, not funny, but tragic thing is that they were kind of almost right, because there is this ambivalent attachment. The child is getting some, but not enough. And so the child knows there's something to be had from the mother. Yeah. So the child seeks the mother and seeks the attention to get what is needed.
Clingy.
Then it becomes clingy. But it's not because the child had too much. It's because it had just enough to know there's something there, but not enough to really make it rest assured that there was all the contact and love that it needed. Yeah. And that's probably the kind of children that the psychologists saw and said, whoa, we don't want that. Yeah. But it's a huge logical fallacy that they committed. Yeah. Because if there is enough, and then the child will develop a very strong independence, but also a capacity to connect to other people. And you got to have both.
Yeah. And the whole brain is shaped differently. Yeah. If you would answer this question shortly, then what would you say are the effects of baby wearing?
Well, I mean, my article describes it. I mean, we have several good studies that shows that it can, if you take two groups of mothers and one is supplied baby carriers, that the baby carrier group, more children in that group will have a secure attachment, which is what we want. And
so, what are signs of a secure attachment?
Well, I mean, if being a researcher, then I mean, you have a test at 1 year, which is called the strange situation, and the child is 1 year old, and you put the child in a strange room, and you expose it to some strange toys, which are interesting, igniting the child's exploration behavior. And then the mother is asked to leave the room, which then ignites the child's attachment behavior. And from how the child reacts to both the insecurity of a new place, but also the excitement of new toys, how does the child deal with the toys in interaction with the parent, and how does the child deal with the separation from the mother? All these things together puts a very clear picture of the quality of attachment of the child.
So it's this circle, right? The child goes out from a safe place to explore, but then feels insecure or afraid or something. It goes back to the mother.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, attachment is both about supporting the child's exploration, and it can go wrong if you are, for whatever reason, but if you're constantly interfering with your child's exploration because you're concerned about dangers and this and that, then you are also telling the child that the world is dangerous, and that makes the child timid. So security of exploration is also extremely important, but then also, of course, how do you meet the child? Let's say the child comes back crying from something. If you are avoidantly attached yourself, you will ignore these signals and push your child away, and the child will learn, I have to deal with my emotions myself, which I'm not really equipped to do. And that's then comes at this long-term costs. So,
so that's the regulation that the mother does, right?
Yeah, so several good studies on that the children that have had sufficient contact through baby wearing, that they simply are more socially balanced in the positive sense.
Yeah, so that's then it's never just, of course, but the study shows that baby wearing actually does make a huge difference in the attachment style.
And one of the things why I was keen to work with pediatricians was that there was an American study, there's a longitudinal study done out in Minnesota. They looked at the attachment quality at 12 and 18 months, and then they looked at the physical health situation at the age, I think, around 33. If they were insecurely attached at 12 and 18 months, there was 4 times greater chance of them having a physical illness at the age of 33. Wow. Yeah. So I mean, if you want to talk about prevention and you know, long-term health, you really got to get attachment right.
So it really isn't just psychological health, right?
It's really, I mean,
it isn't just biological. No, it's
psychological.
It's not just psychological health. It's biological health.
It really seems that way. It's the first study that was done, but it's a very good group in America that did it.
I mean, if you only look at the amount of stress hormones that are in the body,
exactly,
the body can only deal for a certain amount of time being in a survival state.
Yeah, and if you have, it's what attachment does. It shapes your expectation of how you are met as a person in the world, and if you know that you'll be, if you know, quote unquote, that you'll be. It's
all subconscious, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't know. But if you know that you'll be met with rejection and coldness, you prepare yourself for that, and it's not nice. Anybody knows if you come into a room and everybody thinks, "Who's that idiot over there?" That feels horrible.
Yeah. And that does something to your body too, to your state, right?
You get and that's probably why at age 33 we see the body starting to give in to various physical illnesses. So no, it's
you can also see it the other way around then by seeing how you respond to certain situations in your life, or how you have relationships in your life, or what you expect from the world or from someone, from a relationship. Then you can actually see how you were attached to your parents.
That is a good question, how much you can see yourself. You know what I mean? Do you understand what I'm saying? I think most people are utterly blind to their own attachment.
Well, it's because it's so subconscious, right? It's our experience that is completely in our subconscious, which drives us, but we aren't aware of it.
I think, I mean, but if you constantly if you're constantly having unsuccessful romantic relationships and having a lot of concerns about, then it's probably ambivalent attachment. If you have no concerns whatsoever, but you're also a relatively angry loner, then you probably have an avoidant attachment. But
then the thing is, of course, you're so used to how you're doing things in life that's normal.
That's your expectancy. It's tricky. It really is. So you asked me what baby wearing, in short, what it can do. So certainly there's psychological dimensions which now also really seems to play out in biological health in the long term. And then we have about 3 studies now looking at breastfeeding outcomes, which is also very promising. And then that also spells into how mother milk can really protect against illnesses because of the, that's maybe a different discussion, but breastfeeding also. We have 2 studies that look at postpartum depression from different ways of measuring it, but that also seems to be, and maybe that's the oxytocin getting activated, getting you out of your stress state, getting you more into your parasympathetic system, so you're more calm and so it slowly works you out of the depression, it seems.
So then there you also see this working together, huh? It's not just
definitely bidirectional.
It's not just the parent doing something for the child. It's the relationship that makes it work so well. For the parent also.
And to have a securely attached child, I would argue, is probably a lot easier than having an insecurely attached child.
It's a lot less work.
If you want to just be lazy and say, I don't care about all this hippie argumentation, I just want to have a relatively easy life, well, then it says, you may
invest this time.
Invest this time and get a carrier that works for you. And I mean, you don't have to be very ideological about it. Just be very practical.
Which is then, of course, that's true. But then there's also, if you are insecurely attached in any way yourself, then these behaviors, it's not just a choice that you can make.
You mean what, about baby wearing?
No, not about baby wearing. Right. So baby wearing is actually, I mean more the nurturing behaviors in a mother. But then if we look at baby wearing, that's every mother. It's a low cost, very easy way to invest in attachment, secure attachment, even when you haven't had a secure attachment yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's my original PhD was organic agriculture, and I was inspired by a Japanese researcher who developed a system. He called it do nothing farming, and because he had read nature so closely, he just sowed and harvested. And this is a little bit the same. I mean, you don't have to go around read 1,000 books about how to take care of your child.
Yeah.
To a large degree, just by having the contact, your own biological systems get activated, and often you see that. But that's what the studies show.
Yeah.
Because they're control groups, you can see how would it have gone if they didn't have a baby carrier.
Yeah.
And it seems that without any mental effort, the defense mechanisms and the wrong programs, they simply melt away.
Yeah.
It's magical.
So if we trust our biology, our nature, then that has a huge effect on how we parent.
Yeah.
And we support that by skin-to-skin contact, baby wearing.
It's so much more effortless.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Yeah.
So, you don't have to be an ideologist. You just have to be lazy, a lazy mother.
Yeah.
Or father. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think we have as mothers and as parents, naturally it's in us to be a caring, loving parent.
Yep.
It's just that we have gone far away from that in our society, maybe also in the way that we were raised, the way that we were born.
35 to 40% of the mothers would also have had mothers. I mean,
exactly. And I actually personally believe that's actually there's more insecure attachment than what they say. Yeah. But even if it's just that amount.
Yeah.
It's actually so clear, and that's what with most of attachment. The more I learn about attachment, the more I see like this is so easy.
Yeah.
And it is just being, well, it's so easy and it's so hard when you haven't had a secure attachment yourself. Yeah. But when it comes to baby wearing, it's really simple because you just get a baby carrier that suits you, that you like, and then you just wear your child.
Yeah. One could say, I mean, in the case of some particular types of trauma, that maybe that triggers the trauma, and that's where things get a little more complicated. But trauma seems to affect somewhere between 10 and 20% of the population.
Yeah.
And that's where perhaps baby wearing consultants, I mean, maybe taking things on a gradient, the contact, because maybe for some of these mothers it may be
triggering.
It may be overwhelming.
Yeah.
But to be honest, we simply don't know. But I do hear baby wearing consultants with a lot of experience sometimes seeing mothers dissociating when they get the child on them. Yeah. That's of course that's not so good.
Yeah. So if you then feel like you don't want your child close, would you say that's then something to listen to, or would that change if you would actually hold your child close?
You know, that I've been saying that for so many years. That this is really where if we. That's why I'm keen to build like a medical profession, just like this lactation consultancy, which now have research programs and their own journal. I am saying baby wearing definitely merits that. But all those, I mean, trauma comes in so many shapes and forms. But so therefore also, it's one size won't necessarily fit all.
Yeah.
But I was saying a fine-tunedness from the consultant, seeing what is the right gradient of touch for this particular mother who is, for example, dissociating when she's having the child in the carrier. That's where we need some finesse.
Yeah, so going from black and white, carrying or not carrying, to how can we shape this in a way that it suits this person with their history, their story in this moment in time. Yeah,
and that's why I do believe there is an important place for baby wearing consultancy, but if it's not taking place, if it's only about the ergonomic position and this and that, then
which now is...
Well, I mean, I don't want to... I know that some of the schools I work with are very much into also understanding the attachment constructs.
Yeah.
But maybe some of them are more about the fitness of the carrier.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that's important, but there's certainly another aspect as well.
Yeah, so it's just, that's the psychological aspect of it.
Yeah. So, but I mean, if the general advice is give it your best, and then if you have these reactions, then that is a bit of a red flag for you as a mother, which can then alert you, okay, I got to do something.
Yeah,
And
I need help, which is very normal for
Oh, absolutely.
new mothers to need help.
Sure.
Yeah.
But so I said baby wearing is actually a little bit of a diagnostic tool.
Yeah.
For a health visitor or even a psychologist. How do they? Because Bowlby, Mary Ainsworth, Mary, these are sort of the big figures in attachment. They all described this in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. That the way the mother engages in physical contact or does not, it tells the whole tale.
Yeah. So then, how did you, with all this knowledge, wisdom, how did you go from knowing all this to seeing, hey, there's something missing in today's carrier?
Yeah.
And to actually being on this path of having your own carrier now, designing your own.
Yes, I'm a reluctant brand owner, but because there's just
simply no other way.
No, there's no other way. No, but no, it was an old curiosity about motor development, which has to do with the child's capacity to uphold upright the head, and then the upper body, the trunk, and then eventually to stand up posture. And then locomotion, moving through space. That's defined as gross motor skills. And then the fine motor skills has to do with reaching behavior. The child sees an exciting object, and then it has to coordinate its arm and hands together with its eyes to actually reach the object. And then it has to manipulate the object to feel what it is. And then most of the time the child will put it in its mouth. Fine motor skills. Yeah. So I kind of, in all these years when I was working for this global company, I was mostly occupied with the attachment ideas and the biology of it. And I never really looked at motor development. So I sat down with an open mind and said, what do we know about motor development and how does it relate to baby wearing? And one of the researchers is Sandy Saavedra from America. Now she's on the West Coast. She had developed a concept called segmental acquisition of trunk control, and it really just says that each individual baby will develop control of its trunk, which relates to the capacity to sitting balance. Yeah. And the one dictum in motor development is that posture is the most foundational for then also the reaching behaviors, because if the base is unstable, then you can't reach anything, and so on. Anyway, so she says it really the development of the sitting balance happens one vertebra by vertebra in a downwards direction, and she did a later study also where she looked, do parents intuitively understand that? Yeah. And the short answer is that they do. They have a good idea. Where's my child come to in this downwards progression of control? And she said, well, that should then spell into that whoever develops and markets assistive technology equipment should factor in that each individual child will have, over the first 5-6 months, will have a certain, will need support to a certain area of the torso, but will not need support above that area. Yeah.
Which actually is actually then moving against the development then, if you constrain them.
If you constrain them, you are, one could be say, you are robbing the child of these movement opportunities that it's actually really wanting to have. I mean, these children are so keen to develop, and we are inspired by cross-cultural studies where the mothers have other, I'd say, higher expectation of what their children can, and they reach, for example, sitting milestones at 4 months, where instead of 8 months in the Western world. Yeah.
So this all starts, right? Just to be clear, with the baby being able to keep its head up.
The first thing
right?
that happens is a head control.
Just to make be clear, like that's what most of us understand and see. Like, oh yeah, there's a time when the baby can actually keep its own head up.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's where it's. That's that downwards.
Because
development.
There are seven vertebrae in the neck.
Yeah, exactly. So that's that upward down.
It starts really from not just the trunk, but even from the And then there was another study that showed 4-week-old babies where the parents were given some 20-minute exercise program a day. And they were also asked to carry the children in a carrier where the head is not completely fixated.
Yeah.
And then they did, every month, they did measurements of the child's head control with kinematic measurements. So, and they could see it takes very little input of exercises for the child to really come above the developmental normal curve.
Wow, yeah.
So, and they say in their discussion, they say that the research shows that children can benefit from movement opportunities as early as 4 to 6 weeks, if not much earlier.
Yeah.
So it would make sense to make a carrier that actually provides that freedom for the child, with an intuitive parent that probably will hold the head and support it, but also play a bit around with what can my child do. Yeah. And the head should ideally not be fixated in the carrier, because then the wobbling still gives the child a little bit of challenging sort of.
Which is isn't that also much of the time seen as it's very bad for the baby if the head wobbles?
I can't speak for the general consensus, but I would say in many soft structure carriers there is a little bit of wobbly room. But so I'm not. Yeah.
I always think that there is an idea that that's not good for the baby's head.
It could be, and it's a little bit of a minefield. It could be that some of the people that uses wrap tend to like to put the baby's head to the side and then put the wrap so the head is relatively stabilized. Yeah. And that I would not necessarily concur with. No. Yeah, I'm ready to take a fight about that one. Yeah, I would say, it's fine. Yeah. We probably, well, I mean, the African children do it and they don't have a problem, to be honest.
Well, it's very interesting.
That, you see babies that are simply hanging with the head back, and then in a matter of a week or two, boof, they get enough. Yeah. But this, I would anytime say that's absolutely within the
because
tolerance.
Then that triggers the child to need to build these muscles to keep their heads up, right?
So I mean, from this, I mentioned these two studies, but from that, it would seem that a carrier would have to be capable of adjusting the height of the panel, the back panel support, in order to give the child movement opportunities. Yeah. And
it's not restricted in its development.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm I've come to the conclusion that this controversial front forward facing position that many parents resort to, and then the baby wearing consultants and the midwives and the doulas, they don't like it because overstimulation, the legs are not put right, which is frankly often the case, even though the manufacturers have done their best, but the parents don't know quite how to use them. That it's a wrong solution to an artificially created problem. Yeah. We are confining the children by 3 months. They begin to reach out for objects. They can see further. They become curious about the environment.
So they want to explore.
They want to. And then if the carrier is going all the way up to the ears and they can't really do anything and the arms are inside, then we get what in Germany is called the Tragestreik, the baby carrying strike. The kids don't want to do it and the parents get a bit desperate because they used to love it. What's wrong now? And simply, we are confining them too much.
So their development is in such a way by that time that they are able to use their upper part of their back and their neck, and they want to explore the world. Yeah. But because all these carriers are designed in a way that they're constricted all the way up to here, they can't explore and move their body in the way that is actually good for their development.
Yeah, and then what we have done as manufacturers in the past was then you face a child forward. I would say some companies have solved the hip positions somewhat if the parents knew what they had to do when they adjust the carriage, which my point is often they don't. But so, okay, one could say, okay, the ergonomic position of the hips, fair enough. But the child, when the time, when the manufacturers suggest that the child should be facing forward, is about 5-6 months, which is a time when certainly some children can sit by themselves. Yet they're supported all the way up to the chin. And often you see that the arms are confined in the elbow joints. So what are you telling to this child? You're saying you are incapable of sitting by yourself. And yes, you would like to reach out and touch things, but you're not going to be allowed. So the child can visually see things, but it can't really engage. We are clearly robbing them of movement opportunities, which would otherwise have strengthened their back muscles, their core muscles, and I mean, actually, there's an article called Not Just Playing Around. They look at children's exploration behavior with their hands, and it's the first 6 months is where the biggest change happens in the quality of the child's exploration behavior. So that's where you want the child to, rotate, reach out,
So why do we want that for children? What effect does that have? If we do not rob them of that opportunity, if we actually allow them to do that.
There was some Danish physiotherapists who had a strong critique of baby wearing as a practice. They were saying, parents do it for all the reasons we described before. Attachment, breastfeeding, But they say, but from a motor development point, we are really putting these children behind the curve. They're not developing the core muscles, their back muscles. They'll have a later development of their gross motor, later achievement of their gross motor milestones. But they said something which I thought, that was when I read it the first time. But they say their sense of agency in the world, and ironically, I became a father at the same time I developed my career, and the one thing that pedagogues and others remark upon with our child, which has had the luxury of having a lot of movement opportunities, is this incredible self-security and agency. So
so that is actually in those small things of being allowed to move, to explore, have that sense, or that also build into your body by muscles that are strong. So that does have a huge effect on the development of the self. Then
it seems that way. And I mean, if you look at a playground, I mean, you see some of these kids that have been robbed and are slightly clumsy. I mean, they often go to the bottom of the hierarchy of these children's groups.
Yeah, I also think about Tessa Rosenboom is a Dutch researcher who's done research studies about the first 1,000 days, and she explains like how when you read a book to your child, or you read a lot of books, you sing songs, that if your child by the time they go to school have a lot more words to use. To choose from when they are trying to explain something, then that child is going to be understood better. It's going to be understood better by a teacher, by other children. So it's going to have this experience of being heard, being understood, and then you feel more secure. You feel more like, I can say what I want, and people are listening to me. And so that then, that has an effect on how a person becomes.
Yeah, there's a fantastic expression in the research world. It's called developmental cascade.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's what it is.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, in psychology, we can see with some of these skin-to-skin studies where the kids have been followed up till mid-20s now, that really small intervention of providing, and it was actually relatively small amounts of skin-to-skin contact. It was not 24/7. It would have been super interesting to see if they had done much more than they did. But small inputs of the intervention of skin to skin, you can follow them, because they followed them over I think it was at relatively regular intervals in their childhood and even teenagehood. They simply stay above the curve all the time. And it keep on being there. And it's
so even when they grow old, they're still above.
Yeah, then the executive function and other sort of more more sort of cognitive aspects, but they stay above the curve. And we know the same from motor development, that motor development is sort of the foundation of cognition, and that's been known for many years. So well-developed, motorically well-developed children tend to be cognitively smarter, and even there's some studies showing that's related to academic performance. So
that's amazing. Then, if we focus on that. So supporting your child in a way with something so easy with a baby carrier, a baby carrier that actually supports that, which is your baby carrier.
Yeah, well, that's
up to this point, it's the only one in the market that supports that motor development. That actually has an effect on how the child is going to do later in life.
Absolutely.
Cognitively, intellectually. So it's the attachment part, and it's the motor development part, which is then the attachment part goes for baby carrying as a whole in general, but the motor development part is actually a problem that we face in baby wearing today.
I mean, one of the surprises I had when developing the carrier was meeting normal people. And they heard about my project, and so many responded, "Oh yeah, baby wearing, we also bought one. We never used it." And they said, "We tried it a few times. Our baby didn't like it, and then we gave up." 70% of the people I met had that response.
Wow.
So, and these were, I was out of my little sect of baby wearing consultants, so I was quite amazed. So I'm afraid. I mean, I'm afraid that because we haven't understood that, we are really robbing parents, because parents want to do something that their child appreciates, and the children are smart. If we don't do what they would like and they need, then many of them will say, enough.
Or children don't say enough, but I've never, up until I had this meeting with you a couple of weeks ago, sure. I never realized this myself. No. I always thought, baby wearing. That's just how you wear a baby. Which I find very interesting, that cultures in which baby carrying is the norm, is very normal. That intuitively parents do this right. They with the slings they support their children where they need to be supported, but not more than that.
Exactly. But this idea of supporting them up to the ears, it's been a dictum that we never really thought about twice. And it's safety. We're concerned, does the head fall off if we don't support it all the time?
But then that's the thing, safety can actually become dangerous, right? If all children would be born by C-section, that would be a safe. That one could say that's a safe way, because then for sure the child is going to survive, and
statistically there'll be a bigger chance.
Exactly, but it's actually very unsafe in other ways.
In other respects.
So could you? We have one here.
Sure.
Could you?
Absolutely.
Show how it works.
Sure. So here's a commercial man. Instead of cardboard packaging, we have a cloth bag, so you can pack up the carrier when you're out on your little tours. So would you like me to stand up? Is that?
Sure.
Sure. So, I guess it's most important that you see the torso. All right. So no surprise, we have a hip belt, and we have a lumbar support. So, I need to just see where we have put the cross.
I have also, it's on my...
We'll go like this. And this, obviously you are a little bit smaller than me, so let's see. Right, so so we have a hip belt, which is, this is a feature that most carriers have nowadays. And you tie it on like this. I'm so old-fashioned, I still have this safety aspect. Should this ever break, then you have the safety clip here. And what I have chosen to do, in part because I had to stop so many of the customers we had in my previous company because they were not using the chest or the back strap correctly, so it's too high and the straps were too far out. I've decided to cross the shoulder straps, and it has and also stabilize the cross, so that means you can hardly not get it right when you put it on. But also it has the function of stabilizing the cross so that the shoulder straps don't crawl up and press against your neck, which can give headaches. And it's general knowledge amongst baby wearing consultants that the cross shoulder straps are the most comfortable in the way.
Well, it's actually interesting because I've always avoided crossed ones because I always thought it would make my back hurt. But with this one, carrying our daughter for a long time, I didn't have any problem.
Right. Yeah, but the cross ones are not a bad idea. Yeah. And then we've also chosen to pad them, and one could say, yeah, of course, no, but many shoulder straps are not particularly well padded anymore, and we used a soft cotton instead of mesh. Yeah. This nylon mesh is extremely popular, probably because it's cheaper, and people think they will get too warm, but I simply think they are too uncomfortable. So
and it's very soft fabric.
It's a nice quality cotton we've chosen. So yeah, so then so what you do then is you put on the hip belt, and then you lead the carrier over your head, and then the real invention, where I am so blessed to have the Japanese zipper manufacturer YKK. They've developed an auto-lock zipper, and it works by that there's a little spring mechanism in here, and unless you exert a pulling force on the so-called pull tab, then it locks. Yeah. And and we've sold quite a few carriers now, and we have luckily not had any problems with them. So Japanese YKK seems to know what they're doing. Would you have a doll somewhere? No, you don't. Anyways, all right. Well, that's fine. Well, then you'll have to imagine now
a baby
that I'm putting a baby, and the kind of one of the beauty of this carrier is that because we have this adjustable panel, we can let it down, we can mount the carrier, and then we can insert the baby from the top, legs coming out here if it's a slightly older baby, and then if the baby is asleep, we zip up the panel, and we don't really want it too much higher than the earlobe for risk of suffocation reasons. So you can. In this case, from a safety perspective, you can actually put it precisely where it should be and not have a risk of suffocation. So that's nice. And then let's if it's a newborn baby, what we did with our own little girl was is zip it down and then hold her head, and then you could have long and wonderful conversation. And that's been fascinating for me to see. I knew theoretically that being upright would do something to their alertness. Yeah. But the combination of being close, visual contact, and having a face to look at for the baby, and then dancing, that gave for extremely long periods of quiet alert with the eye contact, which should theoretically program for positive social behavior, and it has certainly in our case. So yeah, and then also. You can adjust it to where the child's, as we mentioned before, segmental acquisition trunk control. You can adjust it to where the child feels comfortable holding its torso, and then you provide support below that point. Yeah. And then you get children that they will really rotate in the spine. They will reach out sometimes with both hands. They'll go quite off center, and then they use the legs to cling on to the mother because they need to offset there. So I say. And then, of course, they rotate to see things. So I say it's a mobile yoga and fitness center is how I've learned to describe it. And then we thought also for the child's feeling of agency, when we roll down the panel a little bit, the torso, if you're walking briskly, the torso is like that, and that's not a problem as such. But we also thought maybe it's nice for the child to participate in the carrying. So we install these hand grips that you can move them if you don't want them. Yeah. But not 100% of the children will. Well, I mean, actually, over time they will. But it depends a bit when they start using them. Actively.
Yeah, because I with our 2-year-old daughter, she will hold on here,
Yeah,
and then I remind her,
Yeah,
you can grab here,
yeah.
and then she does it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
she likes it.
She's also a little bit older, but yeah.
Yeah.
Our own daughter tended to never use them and then just hang on to the sides. But yeah. And then she would reach for fruits and she'd be hanging out of the carrier with her head down and really a monkey style. And I loved it. Yeah. So that's bit, and then just because the shoulder straps are crossed, to put the carrier on the hip with the baby is extremely easy. If you loosen the hip belt a bit and simply just take one shoulder strap down, then the load is over here. Yeah. And because of the adjustable panel, the child is not like completely forced up into your armpit, and it can actually follow what you're doing at the kitchen table or whatever. Yeah. So a very, very easy hip position. You can also do the back position, but it's been interesting that in our user experiences, because of the padding, the crossing, many parents are comfortable carrying their 2-year-old babies on the front, and they say, well, then I have all the more fun of having interaction with the child being in the front.
That's my experience.
Yeah. Okay, but So I mean, I'm all for back carrying, but it seems that with this construction, you can do front carrying longer. Yeah. So
Yeah, because the child is not all the way. Because I very much like carrying our daughter.
Sure.
On the front, but then her head was
in your face. Yeah, she was literally in your face. Right. Yeah. No, but there is. Maybe I just show that feature. There is actually just a little technicalities. I mean, and that's a bit controversial amongst the baby wearing consultants, but what happens to me when I'm at a consumer show is that many parents who are pregnant and their mothers who come with them are concerned about spreading the legs outside of the carrier. So they prefer to have the legs in a squat but not so spread position. And with the width of the panel for any normal and even large newborn, you can actually put the feet at the bottom of the panel, and then they sit in a squat position. So that's one variant. But if you are very keen to have the feet outside, with the help of the Velcro strips inside the carrier, you can actually really narrow the panel, and then you get a sufficiently narrow panel. And then you as the child grows over, you can make the panel.
So that's how you adjust.
That's a very simple way of doing it, but it works just fine. Yeah, and then the last little thing is that I'll just show you the deeper position, because we wanted to make sure that the child could use it. I mean, actually, that the carrier could be used even when the child comes older. So you undo this Velcro and then you connect it like this. And what happens then is now the panel comes out from the bottom of the belt.
I didn't know that.
And there we go. But then you can carry on until she's 8 now, whatever. But no.
20 kilos, huh? Up to 20 kilos.
Yeah, that's what it's tested for. But I would
even longer, possible.
I'm a manufacturer, so I say nothing. But so you actually have an even deeper seat here, and it's also made a little bit wider. So
it's so well designed.
Well, we really worked hard on it. Yeah. We did. Yeah. Well, that's a carrier. Mm-hmm.
It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much. Colors are green and blue. Should I just show?
Yeah.
I'll just show the bags, because then you get an idea of the color. Yeah. So these are the other colors. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Righto. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Pleasure.
These are beautiful colors.
Okay, well, I'm glad you like them.
Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah, I feel very, ever since we had that conversation about it, I'm sold.
Yeah, well, I mean, I say, in the big Western things, Baby Björn got the idea of contact ride. They were one of the pioneers in a Northern European setting. Didymus was much earlier, but that was wraps.
Yeah.
And then Ergo got the idea of the ergonomics better, both for the parent and for the child. And then I say the third wave is we have to understand modal development, and that's the new frontier.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you're the first one to
I
combine
am,
these.
to my own big surprise, and it's funny how I had absolutely no intention of creating a brand when I was writing that article, and then I realized, my God.
Yeah.
And
If you just look at the plain knowledge about it, then you can clearly see there's something really important missing in the baby carriers.
Yeah, and then we have
today.
And then we have all these forward-facing discussions that go on forever, and we have a community of health professionals, the baby wearing consultants and midwives who hate the forward-facing, yet the parents, the babies don't want to be in the carrier being confined. Yeah. So the health professionals look like idiot to the parents, and everybody loses. Yeah. So, and it's just because we didn't read nature closely enough to paraphrase this original organic farm researcher we didn't. We had a blind spot. Yeah. And I'm really hopeful. I mean, so far, the response from Danish, German, and Benelux customers is really over the moon. Yeah. They say, wow, it makes such a difference. So, yeah.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise.